Are you wondering how to read the medical books with lots of pages? We have simplified it for you. This is easy way to learn medicine with Vignesh. We provide educational tutorials on various topics of medicine in an easy way. Watch now our videos on YouTube at Easy Way to Learn Medicine. Subscribe now.
Hi everyone, this is Vignesh from VNMU. Today we are going to see about the physiology about the HCl production, the gastric acid production, gastric acid production. So today we are going to see about the functions of a gastric acid and how it's stimulated, how it's secreted in the stomach, and then how it's neutralized in the duodenum, and then what are the three phases which how it's stimulated, the three phases of a gastric acid, and then the diseases, the treatment for the gastric acid. Today we are going to see about all about the physiology about the HCl. So the gastric acid, the gastric acids which produced in the stomach is about 1.5 liters in the stomach, and then the pH of the HCl is about 1.5 to 3.5, which is strongly acidic in nature. So what are the functions of a gastric acid? Functions. The HCl, which is mainly used to kill bacteria or any other thing which present in the food, like bacteria or any spores which is present in the food. It is used to kill the thing which present in the food, and then which is used to convert pepsinogen into pepsin. So it is used to convert inactive pepsinogen into pepsin. And the third function, the main function of the HCl, which is the breakdown of proteins, and also it is used to digest the proteins and amino acids. So when we look out the stomach, we have two main sphincters. So sphincters means it's like valves. It used to close in this place, in the esophagus and the stomach, which join in that area. We have a sphincter called esophageal sphincter, and then in the area of stomach, the pyloric part of a stomach which connected to the small intestine, the duodenal part of a small intestine, this sphincter is called as pyloric sphincter. Why this sphincter is located here? Because this sphincter is used to, the content should not enter into the duodenum, or the content should not enter into the esophageal, because the gastric acid, which is a more acidic, so it can lead to erosion or perforation to the duodenum or esophageal. So it causes a heartburn. So we'll discuss it later. So we have to know the two sphincters, esophageal sphincter and pyloric sphincter. And when I take the in the stomach, we have a smooth muscle layers. We have three layers. When I take these layers, you can see the folds, which is called as gastric folds or a gastric pits. When I take this pits, in the pits, the fold is made up of mucosa and submucosa layers. So we have a folds or pits, which is called rughe. So before going to it, we'll discuss histologically. It has mucosa, submucosal layer, and then muscularis externa, and then serosal layer. In the mucosa, there is a presence of cells. There is a specialized cells which is used for production of gastric acids. And the submucosa, we have blood vessels, arteries and veins, and the lymphatic vessels. And then in the muscular externa, we have a plexus. So in the folds, in the mucosal layer, so we have a structure like this, which is called as a rugae. This structure, when you see histologically, this structure, there is a presence of cells. So there is a presence of parietal cells, which is used to produce the HCl, and then there is a D cells, which is used to produce stomatostatin, and then we have chief cells, which is used to produce pepsinogen, and then we have enterochromaffin cells or ECL cells, which will produce histamine, and then we have a cell called cobalt cells or mucus cells, which is used to produce mucus. Cobalt cells which will produce mucus. So we have parietal cells which will produce HCl, D cells, stomatostatin, chief cells, pepsinogen, E cells, ECL cells which produce histamine, cobalt cells which produce mucus, and then finally one more cells which is a G cell which produce gastin. G cell which produce gastin. So these all cells, ECL cells, and then D cells, chief cells, and G cells, these cells are interlinked with one another, each other, which used to stimulate the production of parietal cells. So these cells are innervated by parasympathetic nerves, which is cranial nerve number 10, which is a vagus nerve, parasympathetic nerve. So this vagus nerve, which will stimulate these cells, and then these cells will stimulate the production of HCl cells. So these cells are interlinked with each other. So now we'll see how the HCl production inside the parietal cells. So here I'm going to draw the blood vessels. These are parietal cells. parietal cells, and then here we have gastric gland, and then lumen of a stomach. And then we have interstitial spaces, so interstitial spaces. So in a parietal cells, we have a two channel. In parietal cells, we have a two channel. So one channel is proton pump channel, and then one more channel which is called as antiporters channel, which is hydrogen carbonate and chloride antiporter channel. So through the blood vessel, H2O and the carbon dioxide, water and carbon dioxide, which will enter into the parietal cells. In the parietal cells, these two components will join and form the carbonic acid, which will form carbonic acid. And then this carbonic acid, by the help of enzyme name called carbonic anhydrase, which is splitted into hydrogen carbonate plus hydrogen. So normally in the interstitial space there is a presence of Cl minus. Through the blood vessel, it will normally present in the interstitial space chloride ion and the potassium ion, K plus ions, which present in the normally. So this hydrogen carbonate will go out through the hydrogen carbonate chloride antiporter, and then this chloride ion through this antiporter will enter into the cell. Like this hydrogen ion will go out the cell, parietal cell, to the interstitial space through the proton pump, and this potassium ion will enter into the cell through the proton pump, which will use the ATP, So now this H plus is out of the cell, and then this chloride ion, it will easily diffuse the parietal cells and it will go to the gastric glands. So now this hydrogen ion and chloride ion will join together and form HCl. From the gastric glands, this HCl will releases into the lumen of a stomach. So this process is stimulated by D cells, G cells, and chief cells, and also the ECL cells. So these cells are primarily innervated or stimulated by vagus nerve. After that, this process is done by parietal cells by the help of those cells. So This is all about how the HCl production inside the cells. So once again we'll see overall through the blood vessels the water and carbon dioxide will enter into the cell, which combine and form carbonic acid. By the help of a carbonic anhydrase enzyme, this carbonic acid will split into hydrogen carbonate and hydrogen ion. This hydrogen carbonate will out the cell by the help of antiporter, and the chloride ion will enter into the parietal cells. Like that, this hydrogen ion will out of the cell by the help of proton pump, and the potassium ion will enter into the cell. And then this chloride ion can easily diffuse the cell and it will go out and it will enter into the gastric glands. In the gastric glands, the hydrogen ion and the chloride ion will join and it will make the HCl. And then HCl will enter into the lumen of the stomach. So this is the production of HCl in the parietal cells. So now we'll see what is the 3 phases of gastric acid. First phase is cephalic phase. Second phase is gastric phase. And the third phase is intestinal phase. The amount of HCl production will be different. The cephalic phase, there is a 30% of production. In the gastric phase, there is a 60% of production. And the intestinal phase, there is a 10% of production. In the cephalic phase, the 30% of HCl is stimulated by the primarily the vagus nerve will stimulate the D cells, chief cells, this enterochromaffin cells, and then G cells, and then these cells will stimulate the parietal cells, which lead to production of HCl. So this will help, this 30% will help the breakdown of protein, and also this 30% is produced by the help of smell and taste of a food. It will stimulate the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic nerve, and this vagus nerve will stimulate the cells and it will lead to the production of 30%. After that, the another amount of 60% of HCl it will use to, after we eat it, the 30% is used, and then we need more amount of HCl to another content of it to activate the another content of a food to kill the bacteria, to do the process. So we need the production of HCl till more. So that phase is called a gastric phase, the 60% of HCl. So the again digestion or a breakdown of a protein and the amino acids which present in the foods. We need more amount of a HCl. So we need the 60% of production, and then after it digests, it will break down into smaller particles which is called as chyme, which is enter into the smaller intestine. For this chyme we have to use this 10% of HCl. So after small intestine, the HCl is neutralized by sodium bicarbonate. So the sodium bicarbonate will neutralize the cephalic phase, gastric phase, and the intestinal phase. 30, 60, and 10%. So finally, in the duodenum, the sodium bicarbonate will neutralize the HCl level, will decrease the acidity and pH. So this is all about the three phases. So now we'll discuss about the disease. What are the clinical aspects which are related to the cell production? First one, there is a increasing or decreasing production of gastric acids. So there is a decreasing and increasing production of gastric acids which are related to the any other disease. It may be anemia, vitamin deficiency, and then infection, especially Helicobacter pylori, and then there is a deficiency of ions like chloride ions, potassium ions. So it's lead to increasing and decreasing production of hydrochloric acid, and also the uses of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. The second one, Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. What is this Zollinger-Ellison syndrome? In the situation, there is an increasing production of gastrin. There is increasing production of gastrin level. So this gastrin will stimulate the production of HCl. So there is an increasing level of hydrochloric acid in the stomach. So it's lead to gastric ulcers. So when there is an infection, especially Helicobacter pylori, so it's lead to peptic ulcers. And then we have GERD syndrome, which is called as a gastric esophageal reflux syndrome. GERD, gastric esophageal reflux syndrome. So we already discussed about the sphincters. When I have a problem with the sphincters, it does not close properly. It leads to backflow of the gastric juices from stomach to the esophageal or stomach to the duodenum. So when it is go to the stomach to the duodenum, it's lead to the peptic ulcer. So when the acid goes to from stomach to the esophageal, it's lead to heartburn. So GERD syndrome. Finally, due to excess vomiting, it's lead to metabolic acidosis. Especially we can tell hypochloremic metabolic acidosis. Hypochloremic metabolic acidosis. What is this hypochloremic metabolic acidosis? There is a decreased level of chloride ions. There is a decreased level of blood acidity. So this is a hypochloremic metabolic acidosis. So when there is increasing or decreasing gastric acid, and then Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, there is a increasing level of gastrin. So it's lead to increasing production of HCl. So it leads to gastric ulcers. When there is infection, Helicobacter pylori infection, it leads to peptic ulcer. And then we have a GERD syndrome, gastric esophageal reflux disease. Due to excess vomiting, it leads to hypochloremic metabolic acidosis. And also, when we have an inflammation, it is called as gastritis. When we have inflammation. So now we'll see the treatment for gastric acid production. Primarily, we'll give antacids. For example, zinc sulfase, magnesium sulfase. So antacids, and then we'll give proton pump inhibitors. Proton pump inhibitors, for example, omeprazole, pantoprazole, like that. And then finally, H2 antagonists. H2 antagonists, for example, ranitidine, nizatidine, so like that. So these antacids will neutralize the acids. The proton pump inhibitors, which will decrease the stomach acidity. And then this H2 antagonist, which is directly act on the stomach and it will decrease the HCl production. So directly it will act on the cell, the parietal cells, and it will decrease the production of HCls. So this is all about the. So thanks for watching. We'll continue to some other topics and some other videos.